What's up, guys? I'm Devin Harrington, the average Gen Xer, back at you with another video. So it's Christmas Eve today, and in honor of this season of giving, I wanted to hip you up to a book that really, absolutely, completely changed my life in every way. Um, I didn't even read the whole book, actually. I only read the first part of this book that I'm going to tell you about. And I can't even describe to you how it changed everything. So picture it. It was around 2013, so about 10 years ago. And I was really struggling a lot, like a lot, with self esteem, with self image. I would tend to call it like I had a ginormous inferiority complex that I had really struggled with from childhood. And that has a lot to do with my upbringing, which I won't bore you with today. But it was this horrible internal feeling of inferiority to everyone around me that I had just learned in childhood. And, you know, by 2013, I was in my early 40s, and it was still, I was just dragging it around with me. It was terrible. Um, I certainly would have had a different life if I had not had this issue. And like I said, I won't go into the whole sob story right now, but suffice to say that, like so many of my Gen X brethren, I came from a broken home. I dealt with various forms of abuse. I used various substances to cope, like you do. And I learned growing up to make myself small and less than in order to survive. And unfortunately, like I said, I dragged that learned inferiority complex around with me my entire adult life. And the older I got, the worse it seemed to get. So it was like a disease in a way, that was just kind of spreading and destroying me inside despite my best efforts. I've always been a real self help junkie. I've always been into things like affirmations and positive thinking and visualization and all of that stuff, manifesting the whole nine. But I still just had this really intense, all encompassing feeling that it was like a default setting in my mind that whatever I wanted to do or be, like everyone else had a right to do or be that, but not me. I was doomed to always fail and be left out. So I would, for example, go to an audition because I've worked as an actress. I would go to an audition and I would sit there in the casting office in the waiting room and look around at everyone who was there to audition and think to myself, oh, well, all of these actresses are more suited to this part or are better than me in some way. And they all deserve to be cast, but I don't. And it wasn't even really like a conscious thing. It was just, like I said, like a default setting that I had learned. So, one particularly desperate night in 2013, as I was sitting around and watching trash TV, probably, and smoking copious amounts of weed and smoking cigarettes and generally wasting my life, I went on Google, like you do, and I searched. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like how to love yourself, because somehow I knew that really loving yourself and being okay with yourself was the key to everything. So I searched how to love yourself, and up popped this book that really, really spoke to me. And it's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. And I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. And it was this picture on the cover that really spoke to me. They have since released a newer version with a less striking cover picture, but this is this symbol on the cover of this book really grabbed me because at that moment, that's really how I felt. So not only did I have depression and various addictions and a lifetime of wasted potential due to this inferiority complex, but at that time in 2013, I also had hepatitis C, which I had had for 20 years at that time. From I don't know if I can say this on YouTube, but from uh, and I'd also all my adult life had what I had been diagnosed with is a horrible chronic pain condition called interstitial cystitis, or IC is the abbreviation. I was diagnosed with it in my mid 20s, though I had symptoms since I was a teenager. And so at that point in 2013, I was going on about 30 years of chronic pain. And this condition, interstitial cystitis, which most people are lucky to have never heard of it, it's a condition of the bladder. And essentially, uh, this is the diagnosis that doctors give, particularly women. Some men get this diagnosis, but it's mostly women who have chronic pelvic pain that they can't explain, that they can't figure out what's wrong with you. So I basically had the symptom of burning pain in my urinary tract without having a bladder infection. Doesn't that sound delightful? um, and I spent my teenage years, going to the doctor and saying it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, and they couldn't find a bladder infection, but they would give me antibiotics anyway, and that's a whole other story. But suffice to say, by 2013, I had this chronic pain for 30 fucking years. 30 years of walking around looking like there's nothing wrong with me, and yet I have this chronic burning pain in the last place you want to have chronic pain. And if that doesn't fuck your head up, nothing will. So, anyway, I got a copy of this book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And in it, he tells his own harrowing story of being in a very similar place from what I'm describing, like feeling like his whole life was crashing and burning around him, and how out of absolute desperation, he decided that self-love was the only thing that would save his life and would help him pull himself out of this horrible place that he was. I think he was a businessman, and he had lost a business, and just everything in his life was going wrong. So in the book, he describes how he just started this ridiculously simple practice of saying in his mind, I love myself, just over and over and over again, ad nauseum, just whenever he would think of it. I love myself. I love myself. I love myself in his mind. He could even be like standing in line somewhere, being in a meeting, even while talking to someone else, he's in his head, just repeating this simple phrase in his mind over and over again. And in the book, he describes how this basically started to change his view of himself. And I knew by that time that we can only think one thought at a time in our mind. I had recently learned that. I mean, it was kind of news to me because and I assume most people, have the constant monkey mind, as they call it, just the constant running of typically negative thoughts, just like a hamster on a wheel in your head. But it is true, you can only think one thought at a time. So you can choose to think something positive as an internal mantra of sorts and let it replace some of that constant random babble that the mind produces. And the phrase, I love myself, in whatever your native language is, in my opinion, just a very powerful way to get your mind's attention. Because when we say I, automatically the ego perks up like, oh, it's all about me. And then the word love is such a powerful word in every language. It means something to all of us. And so when you think, I love myself, um, again, my opinion, I feel like it has some way of changing your brain. And there's all kinds of, there's a million books about how meditation and mantras and positive thinking can rewire your brain. So if you're interested in that, please do go find any number of books about it. But here's where I started to see things change for myself. So I thought this was so ridiculous that this guy, and by the way, this is what Kamal looks like. So I didn't know what he looked like when I first read his book. And then I found him on Instagram, which I will link his Instagram below if you are interested in following him. He is just a super cool person. And he does a lot of cool stuff. And his Instagram feed is just very inspiring and beautiful to look at. And I mean, look at this guy. If you're my age, which is around his age, I was like, hello. Anyway, so getting back to the I love myself thing, I thought it was kind of not silly, but just kind of boring for me to just go around thinking I love myself. I did start doing that just for the hell of it, almost as like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. I'm going to just experiment with this and basically prove that it's bullshit. So I started doing it, and I got kind of bored with the just saying I love myself, and for some whatever reason, I decided that I wanted to make it like a 3-part thing. Like that just sat better with my brain. I wanted to make it, if I was going to be doing these affirmations in my head, and at the time, I have to say, I was working as a massage therapist. And so I had a lot of time while I was working. Most people are pretty quiet when they're getting a massage. So I had all kinds of time to be doing these affirmations while I was working and stuff. And it's something obviously you can do anywhere, anytime. Everybody has some time alone to themselves, even if it's just when you're in the restroom. You can fire off a couple of these affirmations. And so I started pondering it in my head and thinking, okay, what else can I add to this that's going to make my brain perk up more when I'm hearing it? So this is such a weird story, but I have always loathed the expression, I love my life. It just sounded so pretentious. And there's another twist to that because I remember watching the Oscars one year, and it was the year after Julia Roberts won for Erin Brockovich, I think, and she was presenting the Best Actor Oscar. And she opened the thing, and Denzel had won, and of course they had worked together and were friends. And before she announced his name, she said, oh, I love my life, that she was getting to present the Best Actor Oscar to Denzel. And I actually had the misfortune to wait on Julia Roberts back in the 90s when I lived in New York City, and she was horrible. She was awful. And so I've never been a fan of Julia Roberts. And so that expression, I don't know why it stuck in my head, probably because I had always thought people who say, I love my life, are pretentious and, full of themselves. And then she had said it, and it stuck in my head. But I wanted to be someone who really loved their life. I wanted to be that person so badly. So I decided, okay, I'm going to get over this. Like, I'm, here I am. I'm 42 years old in 2013. I need to fucking get over the fact that I can't love my life because of Julia Roberts or some bullshit. So I added that to it. I love myself. I love my life. And 3 is a good number. So I thought, what else can I add to that? Because I figured I love myself. I love my life encompasses, your financial life, your romantic life, your personal life, your work life. If you love your life, then you are doing great in all those aspects. So I added that. And then I wanted to do something for the physical because, as I mentioned, I had some really horrible, just when you have chronic pain, and I'm sure there are bazillions of people out there who have chronic pain of various kinds, but particularly when you have chronic pain in your pelvis, it's a special kind of hell. And I will, depending on the response I get to this video, I may go into that more. I don't know. We'll see. But I had chronic pelvic pain from the time I was a teenager. So I grew up and went through my 20s and my 30s and all my wild years and dating life with this horrible diagnosis that, quite frankly, just destroyed my sex life. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but it was a beast. And I went from doctor to doctor to doctor to specialist to gynecologist to urogynecologist. I saw doctors in every state that I lived in, all of this without health insurance, because at the time I was self-employed. This is before the Affordable Care Act went into effect. And I don't know if you remember back in the bad old days before healthcare reform, but if you had pre-existing conditions, you could not get health insurance for love nor money. I was self-employed. I made too much money to qualify for city or federal free healthcare, and I could not afford buying my own health insurance, even if I could qualify for it. So I was in a really horrible place. So that's just to give you an idea of where I was at. So I added the final little bit of this little mantra I made for myself was, of course, being an American woman who was trying to lose 25 pounds my whole life. I at first thought, well, I want to be a size 6. So I'm going to say, I love my perfect size 6 body. Because, according to books like The Secret and stuff, that will make it come true, and I'll be a size 6. But I quickly decided, what if I just say I love my perfect healthy body and just leave it kind of neutral like that? So that became my little mantra. I love myself. I love my life. I love my perfect healthy body. And I started doing it. And I did it while I was working on massage clients, and I did it while I was walking my dogs, and any time I could think of to do it. I, struggled with depression and stuff, and I had back then still undiagnosed CPTSD. And so when my mind would start running, if I could remember and get myself to do it, I would start consciously thinking, I love myself, I love my life, I love my perfect healthy body. And for a while, my brain kicked back and was like, you're so full of shit. But eventually, with persistence and consistency, it just accepted it as true. And so the years went on, and I just kept doing it. And what became my ritual was doing it in the shower. And to this day, 10 years later, as soon as I go in the bathroom to take a shower, my brain goes into it and starts doing it. And I kind of look forward to it, like the way your brain looks forward to meditation if you can get into a consistent practice with it. So 2014, the Affordable Care Act went into effect, where healthcare.gov came online, and people like me who were self-employed and could not qualify before were able to just go online and get health insurance. And this is not a political channel. You can say whatever you want about Obama in the comments, but he got the Affordable Care Act passed, and I was one of those 20 million whose life was drastically changed for the better because of that legislation. So I am forever grateful to his administration for getting that done. If he did nothing else, that's enough. But whatever, this isn't about him. So I was able to get health insurance. So I started seeing an endocrinologist for my hepatitis C. 2015, I'm still doing my affirmations. And there were two companies, I think, who had found a cure for hepatitis C and had medications becoming available to the public. The medication that became available first, I think, is called Harvoni. And I mean, this was all completely still a novelty to me, to have this insurance card in my wallet, to go to a big fancy specialist and pay my copay and go see him. And he's like, okay, we're ready to treat you for Hep C. We're going to get you cured. And I had at that point 22 years of assuming I was going to die of liver failure. And so I took, I think, 2 pills of Harvoni a day. This medication, when it came out, cost like $70,000 for a 2-month supply. And my copay was $5. And I'm not sure, these companies that created this medication, I think, were both vying to win the Nobel Prize. So they might have been giving everybody, insurance or not, a coupon to get the $5 copay. But in any case, that's what I paid for it. They sent it to my house. I had, some tiredness a little bit and fatigue, and that was about it. And 2 months later, I was negative for Hep C, and that's the end of the story. Cured, like magic. And I thought, wow, okay, I wonder if this would have happened if I hadn't started these magical affirmations in my head while I'm taking a shower. Maybe, maybe not, probably, I don't know. But I kept doing it. And then in 2018, so I've got health insurance all this time now, and I got myself a urologist, and she did all kinds of treatments on me, bladder installations and different drugs, and basically told me that I probably was going to live with this burning urethra. I can't believe I'm telling the world this, actually, but whatever, here we are. I'm Gen X, so I don't give a fuck, She told me, if you had urgency and frequency and all these other symptoms that we see with IC, then I probably could help you, but the burning pain is like the hardest one to cure for some reason. And you've already tried everything that we give for this kind of pain. So I don't know what else to do. So out of a last resort, she sends me to pelvic floor physical therapy, which I had tried years earlier before I had insurance, but it was cost prohibitive. I couldn't afford it. So I only went a couple of times. Well, now I had insurance, so I could go on a copay. And so I went for pelvic floor PT twice a week for 6 or 7 or 8 months. And within 4 months, I started to feel better. And by the time I had done, 3 or 4 rounds, I kept going back to the doctor and saying at the time you needed a prescription for PT in my state. I kept saying, give me another prescription for that because it's working. And as it turns out, there is a muscle in the female human body called the compressor urethra, which kind of straps your urinary tract into place. And mine on the right side was in spasm and was really tight and had a big knot in that muscle and had been like that my entire adult life and was squeezing my urethra. And that is what caused all of my symptoms. About 1 inch of tight muscle. So I grew up dragging around this diagnosis of this horrible disease. And I never had interstitial cystitis to begin with. And there's, so much more to that story. If anybody cares, let me know in the comments. I may make some videos about it. But the moral of the story is, would that have happened if I hadn't been doing these affirmations? Maybe, maybe not. But I thought all my life I had interstitial cystitis, and I knew for 22 years I had hepatitis C. And then I started doing these affirmations and I convinced my brain that I had a perfectly healthy body, and these things happened. And now I have neither. I am perfectly healthy. So if you are someone out there with chronic pelvic pain, please find a way to find a good pelvic floor PT and see if it can help. Because I am just one person. And like I say, I am the average Gen Xer because I am the average American woman in so many ways. And if I thought I had this awful disease all these years, and it just turned out to be tight muscle because I grew up riding horses. I had fallen off horses and landed on my tailbone. I had fallen on my tailbone. I had various injuries, which any injury can cause damage to the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is just a bunch of muscles that basically hold our guts in at the bottom of the body. And tightness in anywhere can cause all kinds of problems that would seem impossible to be caused just by tight muscles. And I can go into more detail on this. If anyone cares, let me know. But for the purposes of this video, I started doing this little mantra thanks to Kamal Ravikant's book. And it absolutely changed my life. Not just in that I was cured from these two life-threatening conditions, because hepatitis C will kill you by destroying your liver, and IC will kill you by driving you insane. I also dropped my lifelong insecurity complex, which was enough of a miracle. So please head over to Kamal's Instagram, check out his book. You can most likely get the free sample of the first couple of chapters on Kindle. And if not, then just try making up your own little mantra. If you don't want to use mine, make up your own. But the first part of it is I love myself. And that's where everything begins from. And so with that, I think I will call it a night. Whatever and however you celebrate, I'm wishing you happy winter holidays. And Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.